All right.
All right. Good
Couple
morning.
couple technical difficulties, but we're here. We're making it happen.
We did it.
How's yeah, we did it.
Yeah.
So we are a week away from our mastermind. You ready to come down to sunny Florida or what?
Yeah, I'm pumped. In fact, it's funny you say that because last night I just realized it's going to be warm next week.
Well, I hope
Like
I hope it
I
is
haven't looked
because
at the weather or anything.
well, it's been cold, unseasonably cold, and it's not been fun. We talked about this
Yeah,
last week a little
I
bit,
know,
but compared to
but
where you're at, probably
yeah, I still
still
feel like
not too bad.
it'll feel pretty warm. I think it's going to be like 60s and 70s, which I guess is probably for a high for Florida isn't super warm, but
Yeah, it'll
I sat
it'll
outside this morning having my coffee. It's 20 degrees. So
That's impressive.
mm,
I'm impressed that you get out there still and make that happen.
I have a Snuggie. Do you know what that is?
I think so.
Yeah,
I feel like to have a Snuggie, you need to have it. It's got to have like a cartoon character or something
no,
associated with
it's
it. I
just the
feel like
light
it'd be
gray.
something a little kid.
It's light gray. It's very sophisticated, and it keeps me warm. So
I think
yeah.
sophisticated and Snuggie, those I don't know that those two things go together very well. And
Well,
Cody's wishing that this was the Funky Fresh Coffee Club.
well,
Um,
oh, because
Unfortunately,
we're
it's
talking
not.
about my coffee that I
Yeah,
had.
maybe so.
Yeah.
Tomorrow will be the Funky Fresh Coffee Club. So maybe he's meaning let's get to the point here, Cabo. And
Probably. Stop talking about your Snuggie. Why are we
yeah,
actually here?
yeah. And the point and what we want to discuss is determining the stimulus of a workout.
Yeah, this is a
Let's see.
great topic. I'm excited to do this one. I'm excited for this one to just kind of talk through some things because I bet that you and I might determine things like slightly differently.
Yeah.
But we tend to always get to about the same stimulus at the end. So I'll be curious for that. And also, I think this is something that people just generally kind of struggle with.
Yeah.
Um, so whether it's figuring out kind of how to factor in rest time and fatigue or which athlete to actually use to help figure the stimulus out, I think this will be a good thing for us to hash out and get some questions from you guys that are here if you have any. We're happy to dive in.
Yeah, and so with that, let's just start right there. Like, what's your approach? How do you just all else being equal, you see a workout, and let's
Hmm.
see. Let me pull one for you here. I'm trying to come up. I've got a couple for like more challenging ones that
Okay.
we want to do, but I'm trying to pull up one that's fairly
Like a little more straightforward.
yeah, here we go.
Yeah,
This
well, while you're doing that, okay.
this will be all right. Go ahead. Say what you want to say.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, while we're doing that, I was just gonna answer that initial question, kind of like all things being equal and basically what's my first step. And I use the method that we teach in when we talk about it in the level two lecture, or when we talk about creating a lesson plan. It's something that we talk about in affiliate U lessons when we help people kind of figure out creating their lesson plan, how you're going to determine a stimulus. And that's just the basic math method, which essentially is taking how long the time it takes to do one rep of the movement and then just multiplying it times how many reps, how many rounds. And that's where I start. How about you?
I don't know that I go exactly the time it takes to do a single rep. I think
Hmm.
in my brain, I'm fortunate enough to have done a lot of workouts and been doing this for a long time. So I've got averages in my head and I've got
Like
to
for a full round?
just for like a loading, a movement in a rep range and what is that going to take on average. And so here's
Okay.
this is the first one I want to pull up. This one's a pretty straightforward workout.
Okay.
So a recent CrossFit.com workout, 5 rounds for time, 12 push jerks, 12 back squats, 95, 135.
Hmm.
So you walk me through your process right there.
Okay. And then are you going to walk me through yours and how it's different?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So the first thing that I'm looking at is the movement, but also the load. So I right away I'm considering the load. Uh, and so I look at something like 12 push jerks and I see 95 pounds and I'm like, okay, that for the at least the first round, I'm gonna try to do all 12 of those unbroken. So I think each rep is gonna be maybe like 2 seconds. Um, when all said and done, get it on, boom, stand it up, re-rack it. Especially because it's a little bit heavier. So then that takes me at 24, which I'm gonna round up to 30. And so then I go, all right, well, that's 30 seconds on the quick end times 5 rounds. And then I'll start to factor in that I'm not going to do every round unbroken. So I'll
So
add some time into there.
let's
Am I
just stick
going?
with. Yeah, you're going too fast. So let's stick
All
with.
right, all
So
right, all
okay,
right.
so you've got 30 seconds for 12 push jerks. We've got 5 rounds of
Keep
push
me on
jerks.
track.
So
Uh-huh.
we're at 2.5 minutes of
Okay.
push
Yep.
jerks, not accounting for fatigue, not accounting for transitions, any of that stuff. So
Hmm.
if we're thinking basic math, I'm
Yeah.
thinking like the way you describe it is like, how long does it take to do a rep? So all right, we got push jerks, 30 seconds times 5, 2.5.
I'm taking it from the floor, Pat. That's what I'm thinking. So in addition, I'm also thinking anytime I break, actually, with the back, yeah, I would take this from the floor. What about you, Todd? This workout?
Yeah, and this would be like my big concern. I don't like that moving the bar from the front rack to the back rack at
Mhm.
any sort of significant load. And so um, this would
I
be the
just
max I would allow
Mhm.
anybody to do, even high level athletes at my gym. Like high level being like RX style athletes. Like we're not doing any more than 135 from the ground for back squats. Um, but I would allow this to happen from the ground. But let's keep
Yeah.
going. So we've got 2.5
Okay.
minutes worth of push jerks. Where are we at on
Yep.
back squats?
Back squats, I'd probably, do around the same. Couple seconds per rep. Bust that, um, 12 out, again, 2.5 minutes. So that puts us. Go ahead.
5 minutes,
Okay.
zero, not counting transitions, not uh, counting for fatigue.
Not counting transitions, not counting for fatigue. So that's 5 minutes. So then we've got to add a little bit of time in there for um, the transitions. We've got to add a little bit of time in, like you said, for fatigue, and then also the fact that I I'm likely not expecting everybody to get all 5 rounds in unbroken for the push jerks. I would likely coach this to get the 12 back squats unbroken. Like you should, if you can push jerk the weight, you should be able to do 12 back squats at that weight without having to drop it and re-rack. So, um, yeah. And so now I'm going to add a couple minutes there for that. Now here's where I get a little bit, where I kind of go a little bit more by feel and just experience is I don't really lay out exactly how much. Okay, if round 3 I break one time, that's going to be 30 seconds and I add 30 seconds. I just give a little buffer based on
So
just feel. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, and so based on what we've said, there's 5 minutes worth of work with
Mhm.
no transitions, no fatigue. So where's your range? So now you add in buffer with based on feel
Yeah. I'm
on
going like 7 to 10 maybe.
okay.
What, how about you? Where are you getting there?
Yeah, and so I look at this similar to you in the sense that I'm like, all right, 12 push jerks at 135, those should be done. In my mind, I'm like, all right, what's what would I allow to happen? What would I allow an athlete to do this RX in my gym? Like, how many sets am I looking for there? And
Okay.
ideally, this is done in 2 sets, but I would probably allow somebody that could do that weight in 3 sets. If it was like
Mhm.
3 sets of 4 for the push jerks in the last maybe 1 or 2 rounds. So early, like ideally, it should be unbroken. But I'm like, you know what? If somebody can do this consistently in 3 sets of the push jerk, especially since that's a quick cycle time of that movement, I would allow that to happen. To your point, back squats, the 12 should be done unbroken.
Mm-hmm.
And so I look at that and I'm like, all right, if I let somebody do this in 3 sets with fatigue right off the bat, I'm like, push jerk should take no more than a minute. With fatigue and with somebody getting the bar to their back rack, if they're taking it from the ground and maybe moving a little bit slower in the later rounds, the back squat should take no more than 1 minute. So in my mind,
Mm-hmm.
right off the bat, I'm like, hey, this is a 10-minute ideal stimulus workout. This is
Mm-hmm.
where I want everybody to finish. And so then I'm like, all right, I know there's going to be people that are able to do these unbroken and move pretty quick. So on the quick end, it's probably close to 7 minutes. But I also have some people that might take a couple extra breaths before they grab the bar, and they might go and find chalk, even though this is a workout where you don't need any
You need
chalk because you're pushing
for
a
the
bar
back
and it's
squats.
on
You
your back.
gotta
I
put
know.
it. I mean, you don't want that to slip off in the high humidity in the summer.
Yeah. So I look at
Yeah.
it and I'm like, for me, this is 7 to 12 is going to be my range.
Okay.
10 minutes, no more than 10 minutes is ideally where I see people, but there might be a couple of people that I let do it a little bit heavier to challenge them. And it can, if it's a minute over the 10, I'm all right with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we look at some of these, like Brad, I think was kind of
Mm-hmm.
straight on shoulder overhead, 2 sets, back squats unbroken. I'm with you there. And so these are about 2 minutes round. So 10 minutes. Now, here's what I don't
Now
like about
Brad
what he
says
wrote
10-minute
here.
cap. Yeah.
Yes. And that's what I avoid is like, hey, I can't tell you the last time we did a cap at my gym. Not that that's terrible or that you should never do that. I think that's a great way to make sure that we stay on our lesson plan and contain things. But for me, I want to scale everybody to get to where I want to go, right? Which is the ideally 10 minutes. And then it's for me to decide, do I have an athlete in that class that I am going to either potentially push to go a little bit heavier, even if that means go a little bit over, or if I
Mm-hmm.
have somebody that comes up and goes, I really want to do this one as prescribed, are you going to let me? And I'm like, you know what? If they can get it done close to 12 minutes, I can live with that. So those are the things that I'm thinking about. So like, I think we get to the same place. I don't necessarily go, what does this look like? Exactly how long does each one of these reps take with 0 rest? Because in my mind, I'm like, nobody does this stuff with 0 rest. So I just can't even calculate it that way.
Right.
I'm
But
like, it just doesn't
what's
work.
funny about this, and again, this is kind of what I expected or suspected, I guess I should say, would happen, is that we do approach it differently, but both come up with that same 7 to 10 minutes as the sweet spot. And again, giving a little bit of that buffer on the end. So I think you said 7 to 12, I said 7 to 10, but yeah, right there. And there, yeah, some great points and comments here in the chat for sure. Yeah, and I threw that up there because this I thought had to do with kind of what you were saying with letting people push themselves to go a little bit heavier on certain workouts and still hit the stimulus that you're looking for.
Yeah. And so is there a point in time where you encourage someone to go heavier? And how are you testing this to see if the 135/95 is the right loading with your test run? And so my encouragement of somebody to go heavier is an athlete that I've had for a while and I know very well. And
Hmm.
it's one of those athletes that I can see is just maybe a little bit nervous or like unsure if they can. And I want to give them the boost of like, of course you can do this. This is it. You can definitely do this. And I will encourage them to, because I also have other athletes that I think can do this load. And we go through the late loading phase of the warm up, and I'll look and I'll be like, Kristin, okay, 85 is that what you're going with today? And they give me the look and they go, yep. And I'm like, Roger that. Like, I don't know what's going on in your life. I don't know
Hmm.
how you slept last night. If you're dealing with stuff, and there are people that look at me and they're like, this is the weight that I've chose. And I feel like we do a pretty good job of educating our athletes and also de-incentivizing simply doing it as prescribed. And so people are pretty good at being in line with choosing the weight that meets the stimulus, either based on how we describe it or based on how they're feeling that day. And
Yeah.
so it's
And I would
not.
say, especially for the athletes, like you said, that you know really well and that have been around for a while, if and I know them and I know they can do like 135, for example, or you used 85. So I know they can do 95. And if they're like, yeah, I'm doing 85 today, it's like, I trust, right?
Roger that.
For the
Yeah, it's
exact
what
same reasons that you said. I'm like, yeah, I know you can do 95. So the fact that
yes.
you're like, here's what I'm doing today, I'm like, let's go. Yeah.
Yep. And then there's other people that are like, what do you think? And I'm like, oh, you're RX. Like we've got an athlete, her name's Karen. She's been with us for over 10 years now, and she's made huge gains. But it's like I tongue in cheek will be like, no, you're RX Karen, because she's one that needs the
RX
nudge.
Karen.
You're doing like when it's weight, like it's something like this, like she can move some weight, even though she sometimes is a little unsure. And I'm like, no, you're RX Karen. You're doing 95. And she's like, really? And I'm like, oh yeah, let's go. And it there's different movements and there's different days where things change a little bit, but that's how I push them in that direction. And then to address the second piece of that around what do we do to test to see who has the right loading? Well, for this one, the jerks are going to be the thing that like the make or break. And so I'd like a test round. Sometimes I don't get a test round, and I'm like, I just get to watch people as they're doing the loading phase of this. And so I will be like, if I'm unsure, if I walk up and I'm like, somebody has more weight than maybe I think that they can do for the day, then I'll be like, hey, pick that up real quick for me, Kristin. Show me a set of 4 of those. And then I can just gauge based on that, because I know these are going to be the best 4 looking ones they've got, because it's only going to get worse as the workout goes. And so if there's any struggle or if it doesn't look really, really clean, then that's going to be too heavy, because as the workout goes and they get tired, it's not typically going to get prettier. And so I'll either be like, yep, good to go. That looks fantastic. I need you to stay with those sets of 4 throughout to make sure we're on the same page. Or I'll move them in one direction or the other.
Yeah, and I mean, specific to this workout too, it gets a little tricky because we know after that 12th jerk, if they're taking it from the ground, like we said, they've then got to put it on their back. So not only do I need to see that they're able to hit those sets of 4, but they can't be anywhere close to like a failure where they're not able to control the weight, right? Like we still need to be able to get it on the back rack.
Yeah, 100%. And I don't think I would encourage somebody from rep number 12 to just free fall it to the back. I would have to, that'd be an interesting navigation. Cause like I said, we don't do that a lot at our gym. And so there's not a ton of experience there, which is also why we don't do it a lot. Right. Try to blitz it. Let me see. Or let me see the first part of this. Did you put that up? We've got 2 pieces. I think if someone says I'm doing 2 rounds without putting the bar down, or maybe 3 rounds, and then they should go heavier, whether that's heavier than 135 or another weight. Or do you let someone try to blitz it if it's a wheelhouse workout for them and maybe they're finishing in sub 6? Like, this is one for me where it's like, you want to try to do this all without putting the bar down? That is a much harder workout, in my opinion, than this at 185 when I drop the bar 2 or 3 times every time I pick it up. So I would
probably count on, I can't even think of an example where I'm like, hey, let's go heavier.
But beyond the RX and
like RXs. Yeah. If they can do it in 6 minutes, then freaking high five to you. Good job. That's your wheelhouse. Tomorrow you're going to come in, it's going to be running and like handstand push-ups. So you're going to maybe struggle with that one a little bit more.
Yeah, I would be way more impressed to see somebody do it without putting the bar down and watch them go for it, because that is the type of pain that does not come from heavier weights. That is the type of intensity that most people shy away from.
Yes, that's exactly it. Like, that's the type of intensity that most people aren't going to do. Like, people are going to be so much more likely to want to just go heavier than they are to try to do it unbroken and quickly.
Because it makes it
worse.
Makes it easier. Yeah, like easier to go heavier.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, I had to put the bar down. It's 185 pounds. It's like,
and you'll also run into athletes, if like, from my experience, you'll run into athletes that are really concerned with their scores and really concerned with winning workouts. And this is their out. to not win. If they have this workout and they're like, I'm going to go heavier, because they know that they probably can't move fast enough and they're not going to go hard enough intensity wise to perform, to win the workout if that's really important to them. But if they go, hey, if I do it at 185, well, then I've done RX plus. I've actually done it in their head harder than that other person that would have beaten me otherwise. But now they have an excuse of why they didn't win. And I'm like, I don't know. We're not playing excuses. Cool. You want to think you're really good at this stuff? Do it all unbroken, or do it unbroken until you can no longer do it unbroken and see the crash and burn and see what happens. Yeah. Let's see. What else do we got? There's a couple other things here. Thruster, the last squat overhead to start the
I would
day.
not coach my athletes to do that.
And Brad is exactly right.
Yeah.
I want that rest 100%. Most athletes do want the rest. Give me the heavier weight. Let me go a little bit slower with this thing.
I fall under that category as well. When the barbell is a little bit heavier, I get happy. When it's light, I get afraid.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't like either one of them. Heavier weight, it's not just a barbell, and weightlifting in general is not my thing. I'd much rather just do gymnastics. You sure we got to lift weights? Anyways, all right, cool. So that's a pretty good start right there. Getting to roughly the same thing with a different approach. Let's see. I've got a couple other workouts. Now here's the deal with this. When it comes to determining the stimulus, I think when there's movements like we see here that are pretty consistent, where it's like, hey, no matter how tired you get, how much fatigue there is, regardless of the load, if we pick the right load to meet the stimulus, which in this case is ideally 2 sets, at most 3 sets of the jerks, unbroken, or 2 sets of the squats, everybody's going to hit that time stimulus and be there roughly. Like, we're going to be able to get them there. There's other movements that have way more variability. And these are the workouts I think that are the most challenging to determine the stimulus. And this actually works out well because Brad brings this up. Can you speak to stimulus with AMRAPs, especially body weight or movements like double unders or wall balls? I feel there's such a bigger discrepancy between reps athletes will complete.
What a perfectly timed question.
Yes.
Brad?
Yes. Perfect. So, let's do this.
Let's dig in.
I've got a few different workouts on here. Let's see. Which one am I wanting to do? Actually, I'm going to not let the cat out of the bag. Let me pull this off the screen real quick so I can pick which one, and then I'll bring it right back up. All right. All right. Here we go. This kind of works. In fact, I've got 2 here that I can go back and forth between, but we will start with...
Aren't you guys all just so...
Oh man, everybody's just on the edge of their seat, I'm sure, trying to figure out what this workout is going to be. All right, here we go.
Does it have ring dips in it?
This one does not, but I do have one that has ring dips in it, because that is one of those that is devastating. All right, so do I got this on here? Let me see if I can pull this up a little bit better. Does that work for you guys? All right, because he said double unders and AMRAP, so as many rounds as possible in 20 minutes, 10 chest to bar pull-ups, 20 back squats at 95 pounds, and 30 double unders. Oddly enough, we've got back squats in both of the workouts I've pulled up so far. Funny that back squats don't show up very often in Metcons, but here we go. All right. So we look at this.
Back squats.
What are you thinking?
Well, 20 minutes.
It's going to be 20 minutes. Good time right there. Are you going to put a hard cap at 20 minutes?
I'm going to put a cap at 20 minutes here.
Hard cap at 20 minutes from K-Bo.
And then that's it. I've determined the stimulus. I'm good.
I want everybody to be done in 20 minutes. There we go.
Well, that's good. Now, with that said, that is, I'm joking, of course, but that is definitely something I think that happens often, right? Like we see like, oh, it's an AMRAP. I don't really have to figure anything out because everybody's going to be done at the same time. So guidelines here, how many rounds are we looking to get? So 10 chest bar pull-ups, same thing. I'm going to look at, 30 seconds, probably a couple seconds a rep, 20 seconds. And again, I'm going first round, right? So let's figure out how long just bare minimum one round is going to take. So we've got 30 seconds, 20 reps of 95-pound back squats. Is that like a 95-65 situation?
Yes.
Okay, because I'll tell you what, I'll say for me, and this is part of the, because I have been doing this for a long time, and most of the workouts over the years I've been able to do as written in the stimulus. And so I look at these through myself oftentimes.
Yeah,
And
same.
that's something that maybe we can put on a side burner to discuss a little bit, because that's not going to be the case for a lot of coaches. And it's not even the case for me now as an athlete now, but I've done it long enough to where I can kind of think like, okay, what would this mean for me? And so I think it can be a little bit more challenging if you aren't in a scenario where you can kind of look at it through how you would do it. But with that said, 20 reps, 65 pounds, 20 reps is a lot. I'd probably say like a minute for that, just off the cuff. So now I'm looking at a minute and 30, and then 30 double unders. We should be able to do that. You pick up the rope, you bust them out in like 15 seconds. So I'd say 2 minutes. That's 20 minutes. What is that? 10 rounds. But again, chest to bar pull-ups are likely not going to be all 10 unbroken every round for 20 minutes, right? We're probably going to do 2 sets of 5, maybe even bust down to like 3 sets in the later rounds.
Oh yeah.
The back squats as well, 20 reps of the back squat. So I'm looking at, this is fast. I'm trying to figure this out like faster than I normally would. Like 8 rounds maybe. What do you think?
I'm looking at some of this stuff. Like I look at Brad here of like advanced athlete 1.5 minutes per round.
Okay.
Brad, you're spending too much time at Training Think Tank, I think, because athletes at normal affiliates are not, even advanced athletes are not doing this thing in 90-second rounds. Like think about the cycle time on 20 second or 20 reps of the back squats. So
Brad and I are so off.
Yeah, right. And so here's where I look at this one, and I'm with you, right? So 10 chest to bar unbroken pull-ups is 20 seconds. You're not going to have many athletes in your gym that is consistently doing unbroken sets of 10 consistently through a 20-minute workout. 20 reps of the back squat, even though 95 pounds is a light load, and these probably should be done unbroken. It's not like a piston down and up for 20 reps. Like your legs are going to be burning. And yes, 30 double unders should take 15 seconds, but your legs are going to be a little bit heavy here. And you are going to, if you do 20 squats in a row over the course of a 20-minute workout, you're not going to be in a hurry. Yeah, you're not going to be in a hurry to grab the rope and see what my cycle time looks like.
My rope's probably going to be twisted. I'm going to need to untwist the rope.
I'm going to have to get
chalk tighten one of the handles a little bit.
for the jump rope.
Exactly.
So Brad hit us with 15 rounds for the advance. I look at this and I'm like, hey, I'm going to average a minute per movement. That's probably a little, well, when it turns into 3 sets, a 4, 3, and 3 for the chest to bar, that's probably realistic. 20 back squats in a minute is probably a little bit light, but it's clearly 1 minute for 30 double unders is clearly like well over what 30 double unders will take. But in my mind, I'm like, all right, this is a minute per movement. So that means that like 6 to 7 rounds is the stimulus that I want. There might be some athletes that I'm okay with getting closer to 5 rounds. And then I think on the upper end of this thing of what we would see in our affiliate is probably 10. You might have somebody inching north towards 11 or 12. I think 15 rounds is like well advanced and not the athletes that are in normal classes most of the time, in my opinion. Do I think that's possible? Absolutely. But that's the person that like 10 chest to bar pull-ups indefinitely is a non-issue. And that's just not who we've got, even for our advanced athletes in our gym. So that's where I'm at there with that one. Let's see.
Yeah, which is interesting because if you take this same workout You know,
Let's
you
see.
have 10 chest to bar pull-ups, 20 back squats, 30 double unders, and instead of 20 minutes, you make it 3 rounds for time. You know, that opens it up to a completely different conversation.
Yeah. Um, let's see. 10 burpees, unbroken squats was like 45 seconds. Yeah. I think 1 minute ish for squats. Yeah. All right. Let's see what else we got over here. Ryan tells us 7 rounds seems fair as a minimum. Most people should be doing just PVC back squats in that scenario. See, I disagree with, well, then this takes us to scaling, which would change everything. Like, I would challenge most all, like not even most all of my athletes would be squatting load. Now there would be like the punch the 20 reps for 6 or 7 rounds would impact our athletes would be pretty devastating. So more than likely most of my athletes would be scaled to probably less reps.
Yeah,
Something
I
that
was
could be
gonna
done
say
unbroken.
I
I'm
would
like
scale
probably like
volume of 20 before I would put a PVC pipe on. But also
yeah.
still scaling the load. That doesn't mean I'm gonna be like, okay, you're doing 15 and still doing 95, 65. Like, no. If you're someone that needs to scale the volume down, then likely you should be going lighter on the squat as well. Because remember, when we're talking about establishing the stimulus, we're talking about what it should feel like for, and this gets a little tricky too. And this is another thing that might be worth saying. When we're talking about establishing the stimulus, we're talking about establishing what it should feel like for those higher performer, kind of like above average athletes in your gym. So when you take a weight that is lower, like a 95-pound back squat, that's a weight that many people in the gym can do because it's not a heavy back squat. But you have to think it should be a light back squat. And so if you have somebody that's maybe intermediate or maybe a little bit more deconditioned, and it's like, well, I can do a 95-pound back squat. Just because that's the weight that's listed and you physically can do it doesn't mean that's the weight you should be doing, because it should be a weight that feels fairly light to be able to move for those 20 reps. So I think we get into a little bit of a sticky situation oftentimes when the weight that is RX'd is a lighter weight. A lot of times, uh, that's where we need to have those conversations with our athletes, being like, just because you're able to lift that, that's not going to be what's going to help you hit the stimulus we're looking for the day.
Well, and Ryan makes a good point here, right? In the vacuum, all scaling options are viable, right? And
For
it, like,
sure. Yeah.
I'm not at your gym. You decide what's best for your athletes. You know them better than I do. Now, here's an interesting one by Brad, and he makes a couple mentions here, right? So my question is, if you have an athlete hitting 140 squats at 7 rounds compared to an athlete at 12 rounds doing 240 squats, that worries me, and 120 chest to bar pull-ups. He makes mention that even 10 rounds is 200 back squats. That's brutal. You're absolutely right in that.
Yeah, bring that back up
But
there. I'm 2 clicks behind on the math. Just you keep talking, Todd, and I'll catch up.
all right. So here's the deal with this, though. You're absolutely right that that sort of volume can
Mm.
be risky. But that's the good thing about a lot of these workouts is they are, for the most part, self-scaling in the sense that, like, guess what? If you don't have capacity, or if you're an athlete that 240 squats at 95 pounds would mess you up, you're not going to do 240 squats in these 20 minutes. You're not going to be able to move that fast. Like, it's just not going to happen. This is where the risk run, like, we run the risk of, like, hey, I've got a new athlete, and new's a relative term, right? And I'm going to scale them to a PVC pipe or to air squats and single unders and jumping pull-ups, and I'm going to push them to get 10 or 12 rounds of this thing. And now they're ones that physically we dose them up with too many reps that they shouldn't have been doing. You know what I'm saying? Like, because we've
Yeah.
scaled all the other elements of this workout to push them to get that sort of volume that they're not ready for. The RX athlete that can do 120 chest to bar pull-ups and 240 back squats, they are they're probably physically capable enough to do this, clearly, or they wouldn't have been able to achieve that. Yes, are they going to be score? Absolutely, but not devastatingly so. And so that's why it's important to kind of know that they shouldn't be the ones that we are completely basing the stimulus off of. If you're like, I've got an athlete in my gym that can get 12 rounds of this, let's make everybody get 12 rounds. That's not it. It should be like, cool, I might have somebody that's an outlier. That's the top end of what we've got. What am I looking for? And like I said, in my mind, if it's like, hey, 3 sets of pull-ups, roughly a minute, 2 sets, 3 sets of squats in roughly a minute to 90 seconds, and then jump ropes that get completed in a minute, that's probably going to be a volume that people can actually achieve in those 20 minutes. And it's going to be realistic, and it's going to be appropriate for who they are and where their current capacity is at. And it's not going to be completely devastating. Like, make no mistake, that many squats and pull-ups is going to make pretty much anybody sore, but you shouldn't be completely trashed unless something else has gone significantly wrong. You're an athlete that hasn't trained for the last couple weeks, and you've got a lot of capacity, and I let you still do the workout even knowing that you've not been here, or something like that. You have anything to add to that? I feel like I'm rambling on it.
No, I agree. And I also, just with the outliers, like I accept there are likely always going to be an outlier, right? And so for the first workout, for example, if I'm figuring out, okay, I'm looking for most people to finish like 7 to 10, 7 to 12, and you've got that one person that finishes in 6 minutes, that to me doesn't mean that I screwed up with the stimulus. It just means I've got that one person that's an outlier. That's their, like Brad had said, it's their wheelhouse. They, crushed it. And most people, again, we're looking to get them within that intended stimulus, knowing there's likely going to be some people on either end of the spectrum.
And sometimes coaches might be like, well, if they do it in 6 minutes and it takes everybody else 10 minutes, maybe they didn't get quite enough, or maybe they'll be bored sitting there for 4 minutes while everybody else is finishing up. No.
No,
that
they need 4 minutes to recover.
Well, they'll either need 4 minutes to recover, or they'll take those 4 minutes to peacock around a little bit and show everybody how fit they are and how cool they are. And like, they'll be perfectly fine.
Look, I'm done.
Smashing everybody in that workout, and they'll be cheering louder than everybody else to really just prove that, hey, I'm done. You guys are all still working. Listen to me here. So
yeah,
not an issue.
And these, like, the things, sorry, Todd, that Amit is saying, I mean, those definitely impact, for sure. And those are things we have to take into account when we're talking about how long a round is going to take, right? You go from the double unders directly into chest to bar, and after 20 minutes your shoulders are going to be on fire for sure.
Yeah, and this is one, like, 30 double unders is probably still in the range that's like, my shoulders and arms can be trashed and I can still figure out 30 double unders nowadays.
Yeah,
the chest to bar
50s.
pull-ups I think will be 50s. Those sets would be small, right? But the chest to bar pull-ups I think are the things that, like, that would be what I'm most concerned with in this workout, as far as like people go from having them to not having them. Pat's right. Potentially some T-Rex arms there with that. Now, let's go to this one from Brad. Do you like to think in volume of reps for AMRAPs, newer advanced, and thinking, I don't want them to go over X number of squats, pulls, and modifying to hit that? I'm going to look at that in general. I'm going to look at the volume of this thing and consider it for my athletes. And to be perfectly honest with you, I'm going to look at it in the workout in general. And if I'm like, hey, this workout is going to provide more reps of specific things, either, and it's usually squats or pull-ups, then I think our athletes are ready for in general, I'm not going to program that workout. So that's one piece. Now, if it's a workout like this that I do think my athletes in my gym in general is ready for and appropriate, but I have a brand new athlete that this is their first week or second week, they have no business in doing 6 rounds of 20 squats, so 120 squats. And so I'm probably going to change this pretty significantly. One, the volume of squats of like is probably going to be 10 per round. And I'm probably going to add something in here that allows them to, quote unquote, get a workout, get their heart rate up, but doesn't provide the same sort of like movement patterns and soreness that squatting or lunging or something like that would happen. So this would probably be for a brand new athlete, potentially either jumping pull-ups or ring rows, probably close to 8 to 10 reps. The squats would probably be down to 10 or 8 reps at either air squats or a load that's pretty light. Jump ropes would probably stay the same, but I would probably add in like a 10-calorie bike at the end of each
I was
round.
just thinking maybe like a row or something like
Yeah,
long, like
something
that
to
takes up a little bit of time.
Yep,
Mhm,
and keeps them moving, but I want to limit. Like if I've got somebody brand new, usually my rule is roughly 30 to 40 reps of something like a squat or a lunge, because those typically are the two movements, like those sort of like deep hip flexion, that make
mhm.
people really, really sore if they've not built any sort of capacity in that. So that's where I'd be at
Side
there with
note,
that.
lunges still make me really, really sore. That's one of those
No,
movements that I could do
no
like 4
matter
lunges
what.
and the next day I'm feeling it. What
Not
is
only sore,
happening?
but like sore to the touch. I sit on the
Yeah,
ground and my glutes are sore to the touch.
yeah. So you've got a newer person in there. That's definitely something. Could you walk through the order of operations for how you would scale the back squats? I know it might depend on the athlete, but from a stimulus perspective, would you scale the load or the reps?
So the way that I always approach this, and let's see if I can do this. I'm going to try to type onto this thing. So here's what I like to use. I like to have a template to scale. And so I always, when I'm talking about scaling at like level ones and level twos, I go back to our power equation that we talked about
Mhm.
at the level one. So it's force multiplied by distance. Let's not go with the feds, divided by time. And so that equals average power, which also equals intensity. And so if we look at force, the first thing that I scale is going to be the load. Oop, I've scrolled down. Let's see if I can do this. So the first thing when looking at this workout, I'm like, all right, 20 reps. I want that to be done in 1 to 2 sets. Let me find a weight. If I've got an athlete that I know has been in the gym, that trains consistently, has the capacity to do that many squats in a single round, first thing I'm going to do is find the load that's appropriate. Can you get it to your back rack? Can you do 20 unbroken reps for at least the first set?
For the
Cool.
first round, yeah, and
Yep.
then after that, maybe like we said, 2 sets. But yeah, the first set, 20 unbroken reps, and still feel like you have some in the tank, right? It's
Yeah.
not a 20 rep max.
Yep. And so here's the sequence that I look at as far as scaling goes. First thing's going to be load. So for that athlete, we're going to find a weight that they can do 20 unbroken the first round, even if it falls off as they go. If we've scaled the load and they're not going to be able to do 20 unbroken, or I know that they've not earned the right to do 20 reps per round and a high volume, then I'm going to change to the reps. And that's going to depend. Probably in this workout, if you're not doing 20, I'm probably going to move you down to somewhere, I don't even think it'd be 15, probably 14 or 12 per round.
Do you use a percentage or anything when you figure out the volume there? Or does it depend on all the different factors? The 20-minute AMRAP,
Yeah,
who
and
your
it's just
athlete
like
is?
it's who my athlete is, and it's just time under tension. It's my experience of being like, man, I know who you are as an athlete, not you personally. You might be a new athlete to me, but I've seen enough of your avatar and dealt with enough, and more than likely, to be perfectly honest, I've overprescribed you as like your avatar of as an athlete so many times, and you've told me how sore you were or not come back to the gym, and I've like, ooh, all right, next time I'm not going to allow that to happen. Um, and so, yeah, it's hard for me to give a hard and fast answer, but I'm going to look and determine based on the individual, what is that? Is it 14? Is it 12? If it's super new person, is it 8? And then, like I said, maybe add something to the end.
Are
I
you
don't know where
seeing that
this.
last comment? Let's just
I,
throw it up there because
yeah, I don't
I
think
I
so.
have a thought.
I think Bill, I think you're fine. I think you're fine.
Yeah, you
Um,
know, it just
as long as
depends
it's
on how well
after
you
the
wanna do in the marathon.
no, I think if it's after the training session, you're fine. I wouldn't start the breathing with smoke, but otherwise, I
Oh,
think
I
you're good.
think during the training session.
Oh, mid run. Well, that is true.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Anyways, let's see,
And then
Ryan.
we'll bring it back, Ryan, bring it back.
Yeah.
All right.
What would be some things you make mental note of during the warm-up to help scale people accordingly?
I mean, for starters, what their movement looks like, right? Are they able to make a correction to their movement when I ask them to? You know, like if I'm telling them to get a little lower, can they get lower? If I need them to push their knees out, if we're talking about the squat still, are they able to push their knees out? Like just their ability to get into better positions when we're not under load and we're at low intensity based on my instruction. That's a pretty good indicator of where they are and what we might want to do. That's bottom line kind of step one.
The
What
other
are some
thing,
other things? Yeah.
how do they handle like the static positions, holding the bottom of the squat, me calling multiple reps in the specific warm up? Like
Hmm.
if they are struggling to hold the bottom of the squat, or I've called 6 like slow deliberate reps and they're struggling there, roger that. I'm going to take note of that and be like, all right, we're probably not doing all of these reps. We're probably not doing all of this load, like some of that kind of stuff. And then, like I mentioned earlier in the call, once we start loading up, I'm gonna, like, whatever they end up with on their bar, I'm gonna take a check. I'm gonna check and see what it looks like for like a set of 5. So if somebody gets to a weight or something like that in this specific workout, I'm probably gonna be like, all right, Kristin, you want to use whatever 35 pounds? Let me see a set of 5. And I want to see 5 that look super smooth and super fast and really efficient. If so, that's probably the right weight. If that looks like it's tough, then that's not the right weight, or there's the wrong reps or something like that. So, we should be ultimately, in my mind, and I know I say this a lot of time, is like, as soon as the athlete walks in your gym and you interact with the athlete, we should be collecting data. Meaning I should be watching everything that's going on with that athlete, and all of my athletes watch how they move, how they respond, how they act, the look in their eyes, to determine who they are for that day. And that all goes into and accounts for what I'm going to do scaling wise. And I know that's not like a real objective thing for me to be like, oh yeah, accumulate and take on data based on how people are moving and what they're doing. But that's kind of what we need to be as coaches, to watch everything that's going on, because so much of that information is going to dictate how we're scaling them and what we're doing. All right, let's do this. If you have, Brad's got another one. If you have an athlete at this time of year who says, I really want to try and do the open this year, RX if possible, which means singles for the chest to bar, or maybe somebody struggles on squats or double unders, are you good with it? Tell me more, Brad. Am I good with it when the open comes around? If so, the answer is absolutely yes. The open is
I'm glad you said that, because I'm like, I have a strong answer here, but it's very, very, it falls very much under the umbrella of it's the open. This
it's the
isn't just
open.
like year-long training plan or anything. It's like this is the open, you know?
This is what you've been training for all year long, and this is the opportunity where it's like, hey, you want to try something, and if we're ever going to do a workout where we're not meeting the stimulus, the open
So
workouts are that. As long
yeah.
as it's a loading deal, like the loading is what dictates everything. If the loading is too heavy for that person, it puts them at risk, then we're not doing that. But pretty much anything else and everything else. And then also, to your point, let them do for the workout on this day. Yeah. Would I let
Yeah.
somebody practice their singles at chest to bars in that volume of back squats? As long as I knew that the back squat, like that volume of back squats, wouldn't devastate them to not be able to come back the rest of the week. But singles on chest to bar, even if that meant they got 5 rounds, absolutely. That's why it's perfect for an AMRAP, right? It's like,
Mhm.
hey, you're not going to mess up my timeline by doing less rounds of this thing over the course of this workout. So, and this might be a workout where in general, where it's like, hey, I'm going to let somebody get a big win and let them do this as prescribed, even though they're not going to meet the 7-ish round stimulus. Maybe it is just 5 rounds, but they did it as prescribed. And this was one of the first times they've ever done a workout with chest to bar pull-ups prescribed and 95 back squats. Or maybe this is one where it's like, hey, I'm going to let you do all 30 double unders. It's going to take you 90 seconds, but I'm going to let you do it and you can do it as prescribed. And this is a great day to just struggle through figuring out how to get consecutive double unders. Cool. Yep. I think that's all
love an
appropriate.
AMRAP for to push people to actually practice their double unders for sure. It's a perfect opportunity.
Here, I want to move to one other workout. This one would have been a good one, but instead,
more
I want to
chest
go
to
to
bar pull-ups. Oh,
yeah, more of those and one-legged squats. But here's one I want.
there's those ring dips.
Here we go. What do
I'm
you
not
have for
coming
this
on
thing?
this day. I don't know. I'm not coming. I won't
You
be
want to
there.
talk about being sore? I don't care who you are. 100 ring dips or any volume on either side of this?
Oh, but it's only one round. What else is there to do? It's only one round.
Yeah.
What is this, a .com workout? Did you make this workout up? Where'd this come from?
All of these have been from .com.
Okay. Yeah, this is rough. Yeah, it's the equivalent of a 5K. Nobody's showing up. Yeah, this is hard. Because this is the exact thing, right? Where it's like, okay, if we do that math method that I've been talking about, how long would you say a ring dip takes, Todd? Like, what would you say per rep?
A second, less than a
Yeah,
second. Like
yeah.
somebody that's good and proficient, and even like for myself, 10 ring dips, my first round of 10 ring dips are done in 6 seconds. Like it's
Okay.
nothing. It's nothing.
That would
But
put me at more like 12 seconds. My ring dips are not as quick. Um, but still, they're fast, right? A second a rep, maybe. Can we agree on that? Second a rep,
yeah, that's fine.
split the difference.
So if we look at that and we go, all right, cool, let's round up and go 50
1
ring
minute.
dips takes 1 minute on either side of
Mhm.
this thing.
Okay.
Awesome. So there's 2 minutes.
Yep.
50 squat cleans. How long does a squat clean take?
We'll say
Two
like
to 3 seconds.
2 to 3 seconds a rep.
So
So
let's round up to 3.
three 3 seconds. So what is that? 100
So that's 2.5 minutes for 50
and
reps.
15. Yep, 2.5 minutes. So now we're at
4.5 minute workout.
4.5
There we go.
minutes.
I'm gonna put a 5-minute cap, and we're gonna be done at 5 minutes. Everybody's got to be
Yep.
done at 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Hard cap.
So obviously that's not the case for this workout. So that particular method, I can use that as like a very, very rough base, but there's a tremendous amount of factoring in that goes here with like how many sets it's going to take, what's the loading for the squat cleans. That's a fairly light squat clean. So, but it's the ring dips. The ring dips are that is what is going to determine the stimulus for this workout. And I also feel like for a workout like this, yeah, 20 minutes.
This I love this for Brad. Brad, who's 15 plus rounds on the last AMRAP, and then 20 minutes for this 5-minute work, like for the one we just did the math on 5 minutes. It's like, oh yeah, that's about, and this is about right for somebody that likes to lift weights, right?
Yeah. So then this is where I also think for a workout like this, you're going to see there's going to be a little bit more of a range likely of a stimulus that I would accept for people, let's just dench. Yeah. Yeah. So with that said, what do you think? I'm thinking like, this is one where I also struggle a little bit, and I'll be honest, it's because I use myself primarily to help myself figure out the stimulus, and ring dips is something that I struggle with. And so I know that I might not be the most accurate person to use when looking at this workout. So I'm looking at, first of all, if I did this workout, I'd scale the volume for sure. But
and most people we need to do that for most people.
Yeah.
Right.
Sets of 5 is what I would go for the ring dips.
100%. So 10 sets of 5 would be my stimulus, and what I would allow somebody who could do 50 ring dips on either side and be like, hey, I need this done in 10 sets. And to be honest with you, on the back end of this thing, I would probably live with 12,
Sets of,
maybe even 15 sets total.
yeah. Yeah.
Now, most people, and here's exactly why I want to bring this up, is because you will have people like, and there was a day and time in my life where like sets of 20 ring dips were a non-issue. And I'd be like, I guarantee you I could get all 50 of these done on the front hand in a minute and on the back hand in probably 90 seconds. There was a
Were
point in
you
my life
using
where
the hinge method?
if it's a kipping one, no, my hips would drop. My hips would drop and I could do
All
this
right.
thing.
All
But I
right.
used to do the CrossFit warm-up where you did 3 sets of like pull-ups, ring dips, like
Oh,
every
right.
single day. And so
There's condition for them.
and I've got short arms and I'm relatively light. Everything lines up for this. But that being said, just because you've got an outlier that could do that does not mean that that's what the stimulus is in something like this. Because like I said, like I look at it and I'm like, cool, for my advanced athletes that are decent at ring dips, this is 3 to 4 sets to get to the 50 ring dips, but I'm going to allow for 10 to 12 sets potentially for somebody who could do it RX and has the capacity to do this many dips. There's not going to be a ton of people that do it. But to Brad's point, he brings up, hey, if you held a 10 dip EMOM, that's 10 minutes, and then 10 cleans a minute or faster, that's 5 minutes. So 15 minutes. And that's probably where I would look for this thing. I'd be like, hey, I want this done ideally probably around 10-ish, but I would push up towards 15. And that's where I would probably want everybody to be done, would be closer to that 15-minute mark. That would be probably, the range would be close to 10 or 9 on the short end, and then 15 on the long end, knowing the way that we're going to get to 9 is going to be scaling the volume quite a bit of the ring dips. And
Now,
that's the truth.
would you, sorry to interrupt you, would you, because as I'm looking at this, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and figure out how long it's going to take people to do those cleans, put that on paper, and then the work for me to figure out the stimulus is going to be primarily surrounding figuring out the time it's going to take people to get through those sets of ring dips.
Yeah, exactly. I'm with you on that. And so I would look at the cleans. I want those done in probably 5-ish minutes. Probably could live with close to 7-ish minutes there. And the ring dips is going to be tough because it's like, hey, if you've got ring dips, I'm probably going to scale it to something that's realistic for you to get done. And that's probably going to be significantly quicker than somebody that's doing all of the ring dips, right? And even like a jumping version of this thing. So these are ones, just workouts like this and movements like ring dips, strict handstand push-ups, even regular push-ups has such a range that it's like we want to, in my opinion, we want to get a good idea of like not only what's going to be the fast end of this thing, but also, hey, of my athletes that I'm going to let do this as prescribed, what's going to be the slowest or most breaks or most rounds that I'm going to let that athlete do, and how long is that going to take? Because in my opinion, that should be the top end, the longer end of our stimulus and what we should account for. Because you're going to have those athletes that can do it as prescribed, want to do it as prescribed, but clearly don't have the capacity to do like a super high-end athlete could, right?
Now, what was your stimulus you came up with? 9 to 15-ish?
9 to 15-ish. I would
9 to
want
15.
ideally for people to have it done probably around 15-ish,
Yeah.
something like that.
It just, one of the things you just said made me think about when we talked about the outliers, right? And it's like you've got someone that really wants to do it RX, we're looking at 9 to 15. An acceptable outlier for me wouldn't be the person that's like finishing in 23 minutes. It's like, no, then we missed the mark a little bit. That's too far beyond that acceptable kind of front end, back end.
Yeah. Yeah. And if I had expected 15 minutes and I get to somebody and they're, in the 14th minute and I'm like, where are you at? And they're like, I'm at 32. And I'm like, all right, you got 18 more. You're not going to be done in 30 more seconds. I'm going to probably let you chip away to get to, get it done in 16 and a half minutes, maybe 17. I can probably live with that. But if I check in with you and you're at the 14th minute, I'm like, where are you at? And you're like, I'm at ring dip 12.
I'm in rep 4. Yeah.
I'm in ring dip 12 and I'm doing 1s or 2s. Hey, we're going to go to 20 or 25 and that's going to be it. So Anyways, let's see. We've got a couple other things here. Kristin,
Make sure, yeah.
Considering volume and logistics, I'd probably just turn this into a partner workout. Yeah, that might be a
God,
good way to do it.
you don't want me as your partner. I feel like I sold you guys on how good I am at ring dips. I'm not quite sure. Hey, I'm actually pretty good at cleans though. I'll
Yeah,
take the
Brad,
cleans.
I
Todd
will.
can take the ring dips.
I will let you do all 50 of those cleans, and I will handle the ring dips. No problem. I got you. I got you. Yeah. Anyways, hopefully that was helpful, guys. Slightly different perspective on how we go about determining stimulus, but hopefully that gave you guys some insight into that. If you have any more questions on this topic or any other topics, make sure you guys drop that in the chat below so we can take a look. You guys can drop it on Instagram, and then yeah, otherwise I think we're on the fence. We might or might not have next Thursday. We will let you guys know. In the meantime, we've got our mastermind in Orlando that we potentially will be traveling for, but we'll try to get the word out as soon as possible. If not, we'll see you guys in 2 weeks. And what do we got? What's our next topic, Kabo? Can you remember? Is it scaling?
It's
lesson
planning, I think.
Lesson planning. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I think we're going to dive in, which is perfect because we figure out the stimulus, and that allows us to plug it right into our 60-minute lesson plan.
Yep. All right, guys. Appreciate you.
All right.
We'll see you next time.
All right. See you next time.